After 20 years of silence, a billionaire CEO hears his ex's trembling voice on the phone. He drops his billion-dollar deal mid-signature and runs out of the boardroom. What she said next will shatter your heart. Stop. Who is that? Who is speaking? The pen clattered onto the mahogany table, rolling across an 8-point. $3 billion contract that suddenly meant absolutely nothing. Archer Calloway's hand was shaking. Actually shaking. In a boardroom full of executives and lawyers who'd never seen their CEO show a single crack in his armor. Sir, his CFO started, confusion washing over his face. That's just background noise from the Portland office. We need your signature to finalize with Beijing. No. Archer stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and slammed into the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. His voice came out strangled, desperate. That voice. I know that voice. Put it through again. Patch the Portland line back through right now. Mr. Calloway, we have 40 people waiting across 3 time zones. His assistant Paige stepped forward, tablet in hand, her professional composure barely masking alarm. The representatives from Beijing are standing by. We can address the Portland issue after you sign the merger. I said now. 20 years. 20 years of private investigators finding nothing. 20 years of checking every photography exhibition in the Pacific Northwest hoping to see her name. 20 years of lying awake at night replaying the moment she walked out of his life carrying a secret that would haunt him forever. And now her voice, that voice he'd know in a hurricane in a crowd of thousands on his deathbed, had just cut through a crossed wire on a conference call and stopped time. Patch it through, he said again, and this time his voice carried the authority of a man who'd built a tech empire from nothing. This time they listened. The speaker crackled to life. A young man's voice, professional but slightly annoyed. As I was saying, Mr. Calloway, we need permit approval by Friday or the entire promotional shoot for your Portland expansion will have to be rescheduled. The equipment rental alone will cost. Then he heard it again. Clearer this time. A woman's voice in the background, slightly muffled but absolutely devastatingly unmistakable. Landon, tell him we need those permits approved by Friday or we'll have to reschedule the entire shoot. I can't push back the equipment rental again. We're already over budget on this project. Rose. Who else is there? Archer gripped the edge of the conference table. The woman speaking in the background. Who is she? I'm sorry. What? The woman. Tell me who she is. That's my mother, sir. She runs Winters Photography. We're the contracted firm for your Portland office promotional materials. Now, about those permits. Put her on the phone. Sir, I don't think that's... Put her on the phone right now. There was a pause. Muffled conversation. Someone saying something he couldn't make out. Then silence that stretched so long, Archer thought they'd disconnected. Until, this is Rosalie Winters. How can I help you, Mr. Calloway? The boardroom disappeared. The merger disappeared. The 40 people waiting across 3 time zones disappeared. Everything in Archer Calloway's carefully constructed world of power and wealth and empty success collapsed into the 3 seconds of silence before he could remember how to form words. Her voice was different, stronger. It carried a weight and wisdom it hadn't possessed 20 years ago when she was young and trusting and foolish enough to believe his promises. But it was her. God help him. It was her. Rose, he whispered. The silence on the other end was terrible. He could hear her breathing, could almost feel her frozen on the other end of that line, her world tilting sideways the same way his was. I go by Rosalie now, she said finally, each word carefully controlled. And I believe you have us confused with someone else, Mr. Calloway. If you could just approve the permits we submitted last week, we can move forward with. It's me. Archer's voice cracked. It's Archer. Rose, please don't hang up. Please, I just need... The line went dead. He stared at the phone, at the red disconnected call icon glowing on the screen, at the reflection of a man who'd just heard the voice of the woman he destroyed and lost her all over again in the space of 30 seconds. Mr. Calloway. Reynolds Park, his CFO, stood with a pen extended toward the contract. The Beijing representatives are asking if there's a technical issue. Should I tell them we're ready to proceed with the signing? Cancel it. I'm sorry. What? Cancel the merger. Archer was already moving, grabbing his jacket from the back of his chair, his phone, his keys. from the side table where Paige had placed them that morning in a world that no longer existed. "Sir, you can't be serious. This is an $8.3 billion deal. Tell them anything. Family emergency. Technical complications. I don't care." He was at the door now, his hand on the brushed steel handle. "Cancel it." Paige stepped in front of him, her face pale. "Mr. Calloway, if you walk out of this boardroom right now, Calloway System stock will plummet. The board will demand answers. You'll be in breach of contract with multiple international partners. Your reputation will." "Let it burn," Archer said quietly. "All of it. Let it all burn." He pushed past her and walked out. Behind him, chaos erupted. Executives shouting, phones ringing, someone screaming about calling legal. But Archer didn't stop, didn't slow down. He walked through the chrome and glass corridors of the empire he'd built, past assistants who jumped out of his way, past a reception desk where 3 people stood with mouths open, into the private elevator that dropped 47 floors to the parking garage. His best friend Knox Rivera caught up with him at his car. "Archer, what the hell is happening? I just got an emergency call that you walked out of the biggest merger in company history." "I found her." Archer's hands shook so badly he dropped his keys. "Knox, I found her. After 20 years, I found Rose." Knox's face shifted from confusion to understanding to concern in rapid succession. "Your ex-wife, Rose? The woman you've been searching for since?" I heard her voice on a conference call. "She's in Portland. She runs a photography studio. She's alive, and I have to see her. I have to. You just walked away from $8 billion. It's paper, Knox, numbers in a computer. None of it means anything. None of it has ever meant anything without her." He finally got his car door open, slid into the driver's seat of the black Tesla that had cost more than most people's houses. Knox leaned down, one hand on the roof. "What if she doesn't want to see you? What if you drive to Portland and she calls security? Archer, you cheated on her. You destroyed that marriage. She might have built a whole new life that doesn't include you. Then I'll know," Archer said simply. "I'll finally know if there's any chance of redemption or if I'm going to spend the rest of my life living with what I destroyed. Either way, I have to try." He pulled out of the parking garage, tires squealing on polished concrete, and pointed the car south toward Boeing Field where Calloway Systems kept its corporate jet. His phone was already exploding. Texts from the board, calls from investors, email notifications pinging every 3 seconds as the news spread that their CEO had abandoned the biggest deal in company history. Archer silenced all of it. 20 years he'd been building toward this moment without knowing it. 20 years of therapy and donations and public accountability. 20 years of becoming the man he should have been when he had her. And now, finally, terrifyingly, he was going to find out if any of it mattered. If Rose could ever forgive him. If their story was truly over. Or if maybe, impossibly, love could survive even the kind of betrayal that should have killed it. But before I tell you what happens when Archer shows up at Rose's door, before I reveal the secret she's been keeping for 19 years, before you find out whether this story ends in forgiveness or final goodbye, I need something from you. If you believe in second chances, if you've ever wondered whether people can truly change, hit that like button right now. And if you want to hear stories that don't just entertain but transform, stories about real love and real redemption, and the messy, beautiful work of becoming better, subscribe to Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips. We tell stories that matter here, stories that will make you feel everything. And drop a comment telling me this: would you forgive someone who betrayed you if they spent 20 years becoming worthy of forgiveness? Because that's the question at the heart of this story. And I want to know where you stand. Now let me take you back to where this all began. 7 years into a marriage that looked perfect from the outside but was dying slowly from the inside out. Some prisons are built with marble and floor-to-ceiling windows. Some cages are gilded with enough wealth that you almost forget you can't breathe. Rose Calloway stood at those windows in the Seattle penthouse that had never felt like home, one hand pressed against glass so cold it burned. 47 floors below, the city moved through its ordinary Thursday. People going to jobs they hated or loved, grabbing coffee, arguing with partners, living lives that had friction and meaning, and the beautiful messiness of being truly alive. Rose couldn't remember the last time she'd felt truly alive. "Mrs. Calloway?" The housekeeper's voice drifted from the marble foyer. "Mrs. Calloway, the event planner is on line 2 asking about florals for tomorrow's gala. Mrs. Calloway. The name landed on her like a coat that had never quite fit right. She'd been wearing it for 7 years now, playing the role of tech billionaire. His wife with such commitment she'd almost convinced herself it was real. Almost. Tell her white orchids, Rose said without turning around. Archer prefers them for corporate events. And there it was. The truth in a single sentence. Archer preferred white orchids. Archer preferred his associates seated near the windows. Archer preferred her in Valentino when they attended fundraisers and Chanel when they met with international clients. Archer preferred her quiet and decorative and slowly disappearing into the expensive wallpaper. She'd given up her photography studio 3 months after the wedding. Just temporarily, Archer had said, his hands on her shoulders, his eyes still capable of seeing her back then. Just until Calloway Systems goes public. Then you'll have all the time in the world for your art, Rose. I promise. That was 6 years ago. The company had gone public. Archer had made his first $1 billion, then his second, then his third. And Rose's cameras sat in a climate-controlled storage unit she visited when loneliness became unbearable, running her fingers over equipment that had once felt like extensions of her own hands. Now her hands arranged flowers and managed staff and poured wine at dinner parties, where men discussed market disruption and women discussed nothing at all. Her phone buzzed on the glass coffee table. She picked it up with hands that had learned not to shake. A text from her doctor's office, a confirmation for an appointment she'd made under her maiden name, because she wasn't ready for this news to become real yet. Wasn't ready for the question that had been burning in her chest for 3 weeks now. But the home pregnancy test didn't lie. She'd taken 3 of them that morning, lined them up on the bathroom counter like accusations. 2 pink lines on each one. Positive, positive, positive. Not just pregnant. The ultrasound yesterday had revealed the impossible truth. Twins. A boy and a girl, the technician had said with a smile that suggested this was good news. Like Rose's life wasn't already fracturing at the seams. She'd planned everything so carefully. Made a reservation at Canlis, the restaurant where Archer had proposed 7 years ago under strings of light that had made everything look possible. She'd bought 2 tiny pairs of shoes, one blue and one pink, and wrapped them in a box that now sat hidden in her closet like a secret that might save them. Tonight. She would tell him tonight. And maybe his eyes would light up the way they used to when he looked at her. Maybe he would pull her close and remember why he'd married her in the first place. Maybe a baby, 2 babies, would bring back the man she'd fallen in love with instead of the stranger who came home smelling like expensive perfume and ambition. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Archer's assistant, her words clinical and efficient as always. Mr. Calloway will be working late. Cancel any evening plans. Rose read the message 3 times. 4. 5. Until the words blurred together and she had to set the phone down before she threw it through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Cancel any evening plans. Like the dinner reservation she'd made at the restaurant where he'd promised her forever. Like the tiny shoes wrapped carefully in tissue paper. Like the hope she'd been stupidly, foolishly nurturing that maybe this would fix them. It's fine, she whispered to the empty penthouse, to the city below that couldn't hear her, to the twins, growing inside her who didn't know yet that their father was a man who'd forgotten how to come home. It's fine. Tomorrow, then. But it wasn't fine. Nothing had been fine for months now, maybe years. The late nights had started 6 months ago. Business, Archer said. International clients, time zone differences, meetings that couldn't wait. And Rose had believed him because the alternative was too terrible to consider. Until the perfume. She'd noticed it first on his collar 3 months ago. Something floral and expensive, and definitely not the Chanel No. 5 she'd worn since their wedding. When she'd asked about it, carefully casual, Archer had barely looked up from his phone. Client meeting. Ran into Felicity Brennan from the venture capital firm. You remember her, right? We introduced you at the Thompson benefit last month. Rose did remember. Felicity Brennan, with her shark smile and her tailored suits and her eyes that had assessed Rose like competition and found her lacking. She'd kissed Archer's cheek that night, her hand lingering on his arm just a second too long, and Rose had felt something cold settle in her stomach. But she'd smiled, poured more wine, played the perfect hostess while Felicity had leaned close to Archer and whispered something that made him laugh in a way he hadn't laughed with Rose in years. After that night, Archer had mentioned Felicity more and more. Felicity had brilliant ideas about market expansion. Felicity understood the pressure of building an empire. Felicity got it in a way that, the implication hung heavy in the air, Rose no longer did. She'd stopped taking photos, stopped dreaming, stopped being interesting. That's what he would say, Rose knew, if she confronted him. That she'd let herself become boring. That a man building an empire needed a partner who matched his energy, his vision, his relentless drive for more. Never mind that she'd given up her own dreams to support his. Never mind that she'd smiled through 7 years of dinner parties and fundraisers and standing next to him like an expensive accessory. Never mind that she'd loved him with everything she had until there was nothing left of herself. The gala she'd been planning to attend tonight had been canceled, coordinator's family emergency. She texted the information to Archer's assistant, but doubted the message. Had reached him through his fortress of meetings and importance. She could surprise him, bring dinner to his office the way she used to in the early days when Callaway Systems was just Archer and a dream in a rented space above a coffee shop in Pioneer Square, when he used to pull her into his lap and steal bites of her pad thai, and tell her she was his good luck charm, his muse, his everything. Before everything became nothing, Rose grabbed her keys and her purse with the pregnancy tests still hidden inside. She stopped by the Thai place they used to love, ordered his favorites even though she couldn't remember the last time they'd shared a meal that didn't involve clients or cameras or careful conversation with an audience. The drive to Callaway Systems took 20 minutes through evening traffic. Seattle unfolded around her in shades of gray and reflected light, the city Archer had conquered while forgetting to hold on to her. The tower rose sleek and silver against the darkening sky, most windows dark except for scattered lights on the upper floors. The executive floor, of course, where Archer practically lived now. Rose used her access card for the private elevator, the one reserved for family and board members. The designation felt like a joke. Family. As if Archer remembered she was his wife, instead of just another obligation to be managed by his assistant. The elevator climbed in silence, broken only by her heartbeat. She clutched the bag of Thai food, the containers still warm, and tried to believe this could end well. That she'd walk in, and he'd be surprised and happy to see her. That they'd eat dinner together, and she'd tell him about the twins, and he'd pull her close and promise to do better. The elevator opened directly into the executive suite. Soft music played from somewhere inside, drifting through the open floor plan of glass and steel and expensive furniture. But it wasn't the jazz Archer usually played while working. This was slower, more intimate. The kind of music you played when you weren't alone. Rose's steps faltered. Her hands tightened on the takeout bag, the plastic handles cutting into her palms. She heard the laugh first. A woman's laugh, breathless and triumphant in a way that made Rose's blood run cold. Then Archer's voice, low and hungry in a tone she hadn't heard directed at her in months, maybe years. God, Felicity, this is insane. We're insane. The bag slipped from Rose's fingers. Containers tumbled across polished concrete, pad thai and green curry spreading across the floor in a mess she didn't notice. Couldn't notice. Because she was walking, her feet carrying her forward even though every instinct screamed at her to run, to not see what she was about to see, to preserve some small mercy of ignorance. But she'd never been good at self-preservation, not when it came to Archer. His office door stood half open, lights spilling out into the hallway. Through the gap, Rose saw them. Archer, her husband, the man who'd promised her forever beneath cherry blossoms at the University of Washington, who'd traced her photographs with reverent fingers and called her his dream girl, who'd looked at her on their wedding day, like she was the answer to every question he'd never known to ask. He was pressed against his desk. His shirt was unbuttoned. His hands were tangled in dark hair that didn't belong to Rose, and wrapped around him like a serpent, her dress pooled on the floor. Her red lips curved in a smile of ownership, was Felicity Brennan. They were kissing with the kind of desperate passion that told Rose this wasn't the first time. This was practiced, familiar. This was betrayal that had grown roots while she'd been planning dinner, reservations and buying tiny shoes and stupidly, foolishly hoping. The sound that escaped Rose's throat wasn't quite human. It was something primal, the death rattle of every belief she'd held sacred, the last breath of the marriage she'd tried so hard to save. They sprang apart. Archer's face went white, then crimson. His hands were still shaking with desire, and Rose hated him for that most of all, that he could want someone else with such obvious hunger while she'd been slowly starving for his attention. But it was Felicity's reaction that carved itself into Rose's memory with surgical precision. The other woman smiled. Actually smiled, slow and feline, and utterly without shame, as she reached for her dress. "Rose," Archer started, but his voice came out hoarse and guilty, and still rough with wanting someone who wasn't his wife. "I can explain." "Don't." Rose's voice emerged from somewhere deep and ancient, a place beyond tears. "Don't you dare say a single word." Felicity laughed. She laughed as she zipped her dress, as she smoothed her hair, as she looked at Rose with eyes like cut glass and victory written across her face. "Oh, Archer, did you really think you could maintain both indefinitely?" She turned to Rose with a smile that could draw blood. "She's lovely, really. Very decorative. But darling, a man like Archer needs fire. Passion. Not a housewife playing photographer." The room tilted. Rose gripped the doorframe, her knuckles bone-white, her breath coming in shallow gasps that didn't seem to bring any oxygen. "Felicity," Archer said. But it wasn't a rebuke. It was almost apologetic, as if he was sorry she'd been caught, not sorry for what they'd done. She gathered her purse, pressed a kiss to Archer's cheek that left a lipstick mark of ownership, and walked past Rose without another word. Her perfume, that expensive floral scent, hung in the air like poison. When she was gone, when it was just Rose and Archer and the ruins of 7 years between them, he finally moved. Stepped toward her with his shirt still unbuttoned and guilt written across every line of his face. But there was something else there too, something that hurt worse than the betrayal itself. Relief. He looked relieved. Like being caught meant he didn't have to hide anymore. Like this awful moment was somehow freeing him from the burden of his own lies. "Rose, please, let me explain. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." Her voice came out steady, cold, diamond hard. "You're having an affair with Felicity Brennan. In your office, while I was at home, planning to tell you that I'm pregnant with your children." The words landed like bombs. Archer's face went slack with shock. "You're what?" "Twins. A boy and a girl." Rose pulled one of the pregnancy tests from her purse, held it up like evidence in a trial. "I found out 3 weeks ago. I've been trying to find the right moment to tell you, but you've been so busy. Working late, taking meetings." She laughed, and the sound was broken glass. "Sleeping with your business partner." "Rose, I didn't know. I swear I didn't. Would it have mattered? Would you have kept your pants on if you'd known I was carrying your babies? Or would you have just been more careful about the lipstick on your collar?" He flinched. Actually flinched. Good. Let him feel a fraction of the pain currently tearing her apart from the inside. "You stopped trying," he said, and those words, those goddamn words, would echo in Rose's nightmares for years. "You gave up your photography. You stopped creating. You became," he struggled for the word, "boring. Rose. I built an empire. I needed someone who could match that energy. Someone like Felicity. Yes. No. I don't know." His hands were shaking now, but not with desire. With something that looked almost like regret. You gave up. What was I supposed to do?" Something inside Rose didn't break. It crystallized. Became diamond hard and unbreakable and sharp enough to cut. "What were you supposed to do?" She repeated the words slowly, tasting each one. "You were supposed to keep your vows. You were supposed to be a man of honor. You were supposed to love me through the boring parts, because that's what marriage is. But I see now that I married a beautiful illusion, a boy playing dress-up and a man's success." She turned to leave, and Archer didn't stop her. That hurt worst of all. He just stood there with Felicity's lipstick on his collar and his shirt, unbuttoned, and not a single word of real apology leaving his mouth. Rose walked back to the elevator with her spine straight and her head high, and her hand pressed protectively over the twins growing inside her. The twins who would never know their father. Not this version of him, not the man who chose passion over promise, excitement over integrity, fire over the woman who'd loved him unconditionally. The elevator doors closed on Archer's face, on his office, on 7 years of trying to be enough for a man who didn't understand the value of what he had until it walked away. Only then, alone in that descending box, did Rose let her hand drift fully to her stomach. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to them. To Landon and Harper, though she didn't know their names yet. To the boy and girl who would grow up without their father because their mother was brave enough to walk away. "I'm so sorry that your father is a man who doesn't understand that real love isn't about fire. It's about showing up, and he stopped showing up a long time ago." The penthouse was exactly as she'd left it when she returned. Perfect, pristine, empty. a museum of someone else's taste, someone else's dreams, someone else's life. Rose walked through each room methodically. The bedroom with its California king and 800 thread count sheets that had become a no-man's land of careful distance. The closet full of designer dresses she'd never chosen, clothes purchased by a personal shopper because Archer didn't have time to notice what his wife wore anymore. The bathroom with its heated floors and rainfall shower and enough space for two people who hadn't touched each other with tenderness in months. She packed one suitcase. Just one. She took only what had been hers before the marriage. Her grandmother's pearl necklace, the one valuable thing she'd owned before Archer's money had made value meaningless. Her leather journal full of photographs from college, from the days when she still believed her vision mattered. Clothes that belonged to her, not to Mrs. Archer Calloway. Her wedding rings she left on the bathroom counter. 2 circles of platinum that had promised everything and protected nothing. She looked at them for a long moment, these symbols of forever that had lasted barely 7 years. Then she walked away. In the bedroom, she found expensive stationery embossed with her married name. She wrote quickly, her handwriting steady. I won't be coming back. Send the divorce papers wherever you want. I want nothing from you except my freedom, and I'm taking it. She left the note on his pillow, left the keys to the penthouse on the entryway table, left behind every piece of the life they'd built together because none of it had ever really been hers. The doorman called her a cab, his face carefully neutral in the way of people paid well to ignore the personal disasters of the wealthy. Rose climbed in with her single suitcase and her hand on her belly and gave the driver an address that would change everything. The Greyhound station, she said. The bus station was nearly empty at 10:30 on a Thursday night. Rose bought a ticket to Portland with cash she'd been secretly saving for a year, small bills tucked into books and coat pockets. Insurance against a disaster she'd hoped would never come. $847. Everything she'd managed to hide from a marriage where her husband had billions, but she'd had nothing that was truly hers. The ticket cost $62. That left $785 between her and homelessness, between her twins and the street, between the woman she'd been and whoever she was about to become. Rose sat on a hard plastic chair with her suitcase at her feet and her hand on her belly and let herself feel the full weight of what she'd just done. She'd walked away from wealth most people couldn't imagine, from security and comfort and a name that opened doors. But she'd also walked away from a man who'd looked her in the eye and called her boring while his mistress's lipstick was still wet on his collar, from a marriage that had been slowly suffocating her, from a life where she'd erased herself so completely she'd almost forgotten who she had been before Archer Calloway had convinced her to give up her dreams for his. We'll survive this, she whispered to her unborn children, to herself, to the universe that had just shattered and reformed around her. I don't know how, but I promise you we will. I promise you that I will build us a life. A real life, where you never have to watch your mother disappear to make room for someone else's ego. A single tear traced down her cheek. Just one. She allowed herself that. Then Rose Winters, formerly Calloway, straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin and waited for the bus that would carry her toward an uncertain future. She was alone. She was pregnant with twins. She was broke. She was terrified. But for the first time in 7 years, she was free. And somewhere inside her, beneath the pain and shock and betrayal, a small fierce flame of survival flickered to life. Archer Calloway had broken her heart, but Rose wouldn't let him break her spirit. She wouldn't give him that victory too. The bus arrived at 11:45, belching diesel exhaust into the Seattle night. Rose climbed aboard with her suitcase and her $785 and her 2 unborn children. She found a seat near the back, pressed her forehead against the cool window, and watched Seattle disappear behind her. Goodbye, she whispered, to the city where she'd lost herself, to the man who'd promised her everything and given her nothing that mattered, to the version of herself who'd believed that love was enough. Hello, she said to the darkness ahead, to Portland and possibility and whatever life she was about to build from absolutely nothing, to the mother she was about to become, to the woman she'd have to be to survive this. The bus rolled south through the night, and Rose closed her eyes and slept fitfully, her hand never leaving her stomach. Protecting them already, loving them already, promising them already that they would never, ever know what it felt like to be an afterthought in their own home. When she woke, dawn was breaking over Portland. The city emerged from mist like a promise written in gray and green. Rose pressed her face to the window and watched it come into focus. Delivery trucks rumbling through empty streets, early morning joggers appearing like ghosts, coffee shops flickering to life, warm lights spilling onto rain-slicked sidewalks. Somewhere in this sprawling maze of humanity, she would carve out a life. She would find a job, a place to stay, a way to survive, and then, eventually, to thrive. She didn't know how yet, but she would figure it out. She had to. For Landon and Harper, growing inside her, depending on her, trusting her to be enough even when she felt like nothing. The bus station was bigger than Seattle's, busier, full of people starting journeys or ending them. Rose stepped off with her suitcase and stood for a moment, breathing Portland air, feeling the weight of her new reality settle onto her shoulders. Then she walked to the information desk, where a woman with tired eyes and a kind smile looked up from her coffee. "I need help," Rose said simply. "I'm pregnant. I left my husband. I have nowhere to go." The woman studied her for a long moment. Then she pulled out a piece of paper and started writing. "Grace Haven," she said, 3 blocks north. "It's a women's shelter. Tell Pearl that Denise sent you. She'll take care of you, honey." Rose took the paper with trembling hands. "Thank you. We've all been where you are," Denise said quietly. "Running from something, running toward something. Grace Haven will help you figure out which one matters more." 3 blocks had never felt so long. Rose walked through Portland morning with her suitcase wheels clicking on concrete, her breath fogging in the October chill, her whole body aching with exhaustion and fear and something that might have been hope if she squinted hard enough. Grace Haven was a converted Victorian, 3 stories of peeling yellow paint and windows that glowed warm despite the early hour. Rose stood outside for 5 minutes, gathering courage before climbing the steps and ringing the bell. The woman who answered had silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a braid, lines around her eyes. That spoke of hard-earned wisdom and a presence that was both gentle and absolutely unshakable. "I'm Pearl Santos," she said. "You look like you need somewhere safe to land." Rose's composure, held together by sheer will for the past 12 hours, finally cracked. "I do. I really, really do." Pearl opened the door wider. "Then come in, honey. Let's get you sorted out." The interior of Grace Haven was worn but clean, full of mismatched furniture and the smell of coffee and something baking. Pearl led Rose to a small office and poured tea from a kettle that looked older than both of them. "Tell me what you need," Pearl said, settling into a chair across from Rose. So Rose did. She told a carefully edited version of her story. The marriage that had failed, the pregnancy, the decision to leave. She didn't mention Archer's billions or his name or the penthouse she'd walked away from. Those details didn't matter. What mattered was that she was here, broke and pregnant, and desperate for a second chance. "We can give you 3 weeks in the shared housing," Pearl said when Rose finished. "After that, you'll need to show you're working toward independence." "Can you do that?" Rose wrapped her hands around the warm mug and felt something fierce rise up from the wreckage. "Yes, I can do that." "Good." Pearl smiled, and it transformed her whole face. "We've got a room available on the 2nd floor. Shared bathroom, but it's clean and safe. House meeting is every Monday at 7. Chores rotate weekly. And, honey, yes, whatever you're running from, it stops at our door. Inside Grace Haven, you're safe. You're valued. And you're going to make it. I've seen women come through here with less than you've got, and they built beautiful lives. You will too." By that afternoon, Rose had her first job. Pearl knew people, knew that Cora Bennett ran a diner 6 blocks away and was always looking for reliable help. Cora was built like a small boulder, all compact strength, with wild curly hair going, gray at the temples, and an accent that carried echoes of her Louisiana childhood. "Pearl says you need work," Cora said, studying Rose with eyes that missed absolutely nothing. "You look like you've been through hell, sugar." "You pregnant?" "Yes, ma'am." "Twins? And the father?" "Gone. Not coming back." Cora nodded slowly. "Can you work hard? Can you show up on time and keep your head down and not bring drama into my diner?" Rose met her gaze directly. "I'll work harder than anyone you've ever hired. I promise you that." "Breakfast and lunch shift," Cora said. 5 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. "Tips are yours. I pay weekly, cash if you need it. You start tomorrow." It wasn't until Rose was outside, breathing in Portland air that smelled like rain and possibility, that she realized she'd been holding her breath. One job, one small victory, one brick in the foundation of whatever life she was about to build. She'd survived the first day, the first horrible, terrible, impossible day of her new life, and she was still standing. That was enough. For now, that was enough. That night, Rose lay in a narrow bed in a room that smelled faintly of lavender and other women's desperation. The sheets were clean, but worn thin from 1,000 washings. The ceiling had a water stain shaped like a bird in flight. Through the wall she could hear someone crying softly, someone else snoring, the sounds of survival happening in real time. She placed both hands on her belly, feeling for movement even though she knew it was too early. Feeling for proof that this was real, that she'd really walked away from everything, that tomorrow she would wake up and have to figure out how to survive on $5 an hour plus tips. "I'm going to be your mother," she whispered into the darkness. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be enough for both of you. But I promise I'll try. I promise I'll show up every single day and love you and protect you and never, ever make you feel like you're not the most important thing in my world." Sleep came in fits and starts, interrupted by unfamiliar sounds and the occasional spike of panic when she forgot where she was and reached for Archer before remembering, before the betrayal came flooding back, before she had to relive the moment of seeing him with Felicity all over again. By 4:30 in the morning, Rose gave up on sleep. She showered in the communal bathroom, careful to keep her eyes down, to take up as little space as possible. She dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, the most practical clothes she owned. She braided her hair back and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was a stranger. Thinner than she'd been a month ago, dark circles under her eyes, fear written in every line of her face. But there was something else there too, something hard and determined, something that refused to break. "You can do this," she told her reflection. "One day at a time, 1 hour, 1 minute if that's all you can manage." The walk to Cora's diner took 15 minutes through Portland streets, still dark and dangerous. Rose kept her keys threaded through her fingers, her phone in her pocket with 911 ready to dial. A man called out to her from a doorway and she walked faster, heart hammering, until the lights of the diner appeared like a beacon. Cora was already there, prepping the kitchen, moving with efficient grace despite the early hour. "You're on time," she said, looking up when Rose entered. "That's good. That matters. Come here, let me show you the system." The next 7 hours passed in a blur of coffee pots and order tickets and learning how to balance 3 plates on one arm. Rose's feet ached. Her back screamed. The smell of bacon made her nauseous, the pregnancy making everything harder. But she smiled. She smiled at the construction workers who came in at 6 for eggs and black coffee. She smiled at the nurses ending their night shifts, their exhaustion matching her own. She smiled at the lawyers in expensive suits who barely looked at her as she refilled their coffee, as invisible to them as she'd become to Archer. The difference was, now she was invisible by choice. Now she was building something that belonged to her. By 2 in the afternoon, when her shift ended, Rose had made $43 in tips. She counted it 3 times in the back room, tears stinging her eyes. $43. It would have bought her half a bottle of wine at the restaurants where she used to dine with Archer. Now it felt like a fortune. Cora found her counting the bills, her hands shaking. "First day is always the hardest," Cora said gently. "You did good, sugar. Real good. Same time tomorrow?" "Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me this chance." "We all need chances," Cora said. "Someone gave me one when I needed it. Now I pass it forward. That's how this works." Rose walked back to Grace Haven with her $43 in her aching feet and something that felt dangerously close to pride. She'd worked an honest job. She'd earned honest money. She'd survived day 2. But as the weeks passed, Rose learned that survival required more than one job. The money from the diner covered food and put a little aside, but she needed more if she was going to have her own place before the babies came. Before Grace Haven's 3-week limit expired and she was back on the street, she found a second job cleaning office buildings at night, $10 an hour to push industrial mops across endless carpeted floors while security guards scrolled their phones and ignored her. Her back ached constantly now, the pregnancy making every movement harder. But she worked. God, she worked. 4:30 in the morning, wake up. 5 to 2 at the diner. 3 to 11 cleaning offices. She slept in stolen moments, on the bus between jobs, during her lunch break with her head on the table in Cora's back room. Pearl noticed the exhaustion and said nothing, Just made sure Rose ate the meals served at Grace Haven, just watched with those. Knowing eyes that had seen 1,000 women push themselves past human limits because the alternative was unthinkable. By her 4th month, Rose's body was changing in ways she couldn't hide. Her belly was unmistakably rounded, her breasts tender and swollen, her face fuller despite the exhaustion. Pearl called her into the office one Monday evening. "You're pregnant," Pearl said. It wasn't a question. Yes, twins. The father, gone, not coming back, ever. Pearl was quiet for a long moment, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had probably gone cold hours ago. "You can stay through the birth," she said finally. "After that, we have family rooms available, but there's a waiting list. You understand?" "I'll have my own place by then," Rose said with more confidence than she felt. "I'm saving every dollar. I'll find something." "Make sure you do," Pearl said, but her voice was gentle. "Because, honey, those babies are going to need a home." Rose found a 3rd job on weekends taking portraits of tourists at Pike Place Market. She'd bought a used camera with her 2nd week's tips from the diner, something basic but functional. Her photography training from college came flooding back, muscle memory and artistic, eye combining to create quick, flattering shots that earned her decent tips. $10 for a portrait, $20 for a family, sometimes $50 if she caught tourists in a generous mood. Her hands cramped from holding the camera. Her feet swelled from standing all day, but she smiled and framed shots and saw the world through a lens again for the first time in years. And even though exhaustion made her vision blur, even though every part of her body ached, Rose felt something she hadn't felt since before she married Archer. Purpose. She had purpose again. By her 6th month, Rose had saved $2,300. She kept it in a lockbox under her bed at Grace Haven, counting it obsessively, terrified someone would steal it. $2,300 between her twins and homelessness, between survival and disaster. The divorce papers arrived at Grace Haven on a Tuesday, forwarded from an address she'd given Archer's lawyer. She signed them during her lunch break at Cora's, her hands steady, her heart somewhere beyond pain. The settlement Archer offered was generous, too generous. $2 million and the penthouse and a trust fund that would have set her up for life. She could have taken it, could have made one phone call and secured her children's futures without working herself to death. But Rose crossed out every number, wrote in her own terms. She would take only what she'd legally earned during the marriage, the small salary Archer had insisted on paying her for managing household staff. $60,000 total over 7 years. It was a pittance compared to what she could have claimed. Her lawyer, provided free by a women's legal aid organization, told her she was insane. "You could take half of everything he has," the lawyer said, her eyes wide with disbelief. "We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. You're entitled to it." "I don't want his money," Rose said simply. "I want my freedom. Those are different things." She signed the papers, sent them back, kept working 3 jobs while her belly grew and her back screamed, and the twins moved inside her like they were already fighting for space. Archer remarried 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Rose saw it in a magazine someone had left at the diner, a glossy spread showing him and Felicity Brennan at some charity gala. "Soon to be Mrs. Calloway," the caption read. "The happy couple is planning a spring wedding." Rose looked at the photo for a long time. Archer in a tuxedo, Felicity in a dress that probably cost more than Rose made in a year. They looked perfect together, powerful, successful, like they'd been built for each other's ambition. She felt nothing, not anger, not jealousy, not even satisfaction that Felicity had gotten exactly what she wanted, just a distant sadness for the man Archer could have been if he'd been brave enough to do the hard work of being a decent human. Then she turned the page and got back to work. The twins decided to arrive early. Of course they did. Rose had made it to her 8th month, had finally saved enough for a security deposit on a tiny apartment above a laundromat, had started to believe she might actually make it. Then, during her morning shift at the diner, the first contraction hit. She was pouring coffee for a regular customer when pain ripped through her abdomen, sharp and impossible to ignore. The coffee pot slipped from her hands, shattering on the floor, hot liquid spreading across worn linoleum. Rose grabbed the counter, gasping, her vision graying at the edges. Cora took one look at her face and started shouting orders. "Call 911. Get her a chair. Everybody move. Move now." But there wasn't time. Rose felt it, the sudden wetness, her water breaking right there on the diner floor. Felt the second contraction following so close on the first that she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only grip the counter and try not to scream. "The back room," Cora said, her arm around Rose's waist, supporting most of her weight. "Come on, sugar. We're going to get you to the back room." Someone had dragged a mattress from somewhere. Someone else was on the phone, with a 911 operator, shouting instructions. Rose lay down on the mattress and felt her body taking over, felt the twins coming whether she was ready or not. A paramedic named Jesse arrived, young and competent and completely unfazed by delivering babies in the back room of a diner. Cora held one of Rose's hands. A waitress named Maria held the other, and Rose pushed and screamed and pushed again through pain that felt like her body was tearing itself apart. "It's a boy," Jesse announced, and suddenly there was a tiny warm weight on Rose's chest, a baby with a shock of dark hair and lungs that worked perfectly. "Landon," Rose whispered, tears streaming down her face. "His name is Landon." She had 30 seconds to hold him, to press her lips to his forehead before the next contraction hit, and Jesse was saying, "You've got one more, Rose. You can do this. One more push." And then there was another weight, lighter and smaller, a baby girl with Rose's nose and the tiniest fingers Rose had ever seen. "Harper," Rose sobbed, holding both of them now, one in each arm. "Landon and Harper, my beautiful, perfect babies." Cora was crying. Maria was crying. Even Jesse looked misty-eyed as he checked vital signs and wrapped the twins in clean towels someone had grabbed from the kitchen. "You did it," Cora said, smoothing Rose's sweat-soaked hair back from her forehead. "You did it, sugar. You're a mama now." The ambulance arrived 10 minutes later to transport them to the hospital for proper checkups. But Rose barely noticed the ride, barely noticed the doctors and nurses and bright lights. She just held her babies and whispered promises. "I'm your mother," she told them. "I'm going to protect you and love you and give you everything I possibly can. You're never going to doubt that you're wanted, that you're loved, that you're the most important thing in my entire world." A hospital social worker appeared the next day with a clipboard and questions. Questions about the father, about child support, about resources and family support, and whether Rose had a stable home. "I don't need anything," Rose said firmly, Landon sleeping in one arm and Harper in the other. "We're fine on our own." The social worker looked skeptical. "Miss Winters, raising twins alone is incredibly difficult. If the father is financially stable, you're entitled to support. It's not about you. It's about what's best for the children. What's best for my children is not having a father who sees them as obligations. We'll manage." After the social worker left, a nurse lingered. She was tall with kind eyes and gentle hands, her name tag reading Violet Chen. "I'm going to give you my number," Violet said, writing on a scrap of paper. "You call me if you need anything. Babysitting, advice, just someone to talk to at 3 a.m. when you think you're losing your mind." "Why?" Rose asked, overwhelmed by kindness from a stranger. Violet smiled. "Because I was you once. Single mom, terrified. Someone helped me. Now I help others. That's how this works, how we survive. We hold each other up." True to her word, Violet became Rose's lifeline. She showed up at the tiny apartment above the laundromat with groceries and hand-me-down baby clothes and practical wisdom no book could teach. She babysat while Rose worked, never asking for payment, waving away Rose's attempts to compensate her. "You'll pay it forward someday," Violet said. "When you're stable and you see another mama struggling, you'll help her. That's payment enough." The apartment was one room with a bathroom down the hall shared with 3 other tenants. It smelled perpetually of laundry detergent and had water stains on the ceiling that Rose learned to ignore. But it was hers, the first space that had truly belonged to her since she left Seattle. She arranged her few possessions with care. A second-hand crib where the twins slept side by side. Her cameras on a shelf above the kitchen sink. Photographs she'd taken pinned to the walls, her artistic eye slowly reawakening. At night, after the twins finally slept, Rose would pull out her camera. Her hands, calloused from work, would frame shots of Landon and Harper sleeping, of the view from her window overlooking Portland streets, of ordinary moments made extraordinary through her lens. She couldn't afford to print most of them, couldn't afford the paper or the ink or the time, but she took them anyway, keeping her dreams alive in digital files, keeping the photographer inside her breathing. A small gallery posted a call for freelance photographers. Rose submitted her portfolio on a whim, not expecting anything. When they called her in, impressed by her work, offering her small assignments, she had to sit down before her knees gave out. A wedding, corporate headshots, a family portrait session. The pay was modest, but it was photography. Her first love calling her back. She worked on shoots while the twins napped, edited photos while they played at her feet, taught herself new software on the donated laptop Cora's nephew had given her. Slowly, painfully, her reputation grew. One satisfied client recommended her to another, then another. By the time Landon and Harper were walking, Rose had saved enough for a better apartment. One with its own bathroom and heat that actually worked, and windows that didn't rattle in the wind. It felt like a palace. She never spoke badly about Archer to her children. When Landon asked about his father at age 5, Rose chose her words with surgical precision. "Your daddy wasn't ready to be a parent," she said, pulling him into her lap. "Sometimes people aren't ready for the responsibilities they're given. But you have me, and I love you enough for 2 parents." Harper, always the sensitive one, curled against her side. "We don't need a daddy. We have you." But Landon, more questioning even at 5, pressed harder. Did he love you? Rose thought about those early years. Before the betrayal. Before everything turned toxic. Once, she said honestly. In his way. But love isn't always enough if people don't know how to protect it. She built her life brick by brick, client by client, sacrifice by sacrifice. The twins grew strong and confident and kind, never knowing poverty was supposed to feel shameful because their mother carried herself with such dignity. They wore thrift store clothes like armor, ate simple meals like feasts, learned that richness wasn't about money, but about character and effort and showing up for the people you loved. By the time they were in elementary school, Rose had opened her own studio, Winter's Photography. She'd reclaimed her maiden name, left Calloway behind like a skin she'd shed. This was her rebirth, her resurrection, her proof that you could survive the unsurvivable and build something beautiful from the wreckage. The studio was small, just her and one assistant at first, but her reputation for capturing authentic moments, for seeing people truly and reflecting, that vision back through her lens, spread through Portland's artistic community. She photographed weddings and families and corporate events. She photographed the mayor's daughter and the local coffee shop owner with equal care. Every client got her full attention. Every shoot got her complete artistic vision. And slowly, painfully, Winter's Photography grew. The twins thrived. Landon became serious and protective, fascinated by justice and law. Harper grew empathetic and creative, drawn to understanding human behavior. They were brilliant and kind and whole, raised by a mother who'd shown them that survival wasn't just about enduring, but about building something worth surviving for. Sometimes Rose would watch them sleep and marvel at the humans she'd created, at the fact that she'd raised them entirely alone and they'd turned out so beautifully, at the strength she'd found in herself that she'd never known existed. She dated occasionally, men who were kind and appropriate and utterly forgettable. None of them were Archer, which was supposed to be a good thing but somehow felt like a loss anyway, because late at night, when both twins slept peacefully and the studio was quiet, and Rose was alone with her thoughts, she sometimes still thought about him, about the man he'd been before ambition had corrupted him, about the way he used to look at her like she'd hung the stars just for him, and a traitorous part of her heart, small and stubborn and foolish, still held space for him. She hated that weakness, so she buried it deep, covered it with work and motherhood, and the relentless forward motion of building a life that didn't include him. Landon found the wedding photo when he was 12, tucked into one of Rose's old photography books. He brought it to her with serious eyes. "Mom, is this our father?" Rose took the photo, her hands trembling slightly. She'd thought she'd thrown them all away. "Yes, baby, that's him. He's looking at you like you're the most important thing in the world. That was a long time ago. People change. Did he hurt you?" She couldn't lie to her son. His eyes were too knowing, too much like hers. "Yes." Landon studied the photo for another long moment. "If he ever came back, Harper and I would protect you." Rose pulled him into her arms, this fierce warrior she'd raised. "I know, sweetheart. I know." But Archer didn't come back. Years passed, and he remained a ghost. A story she told in careful pieces. A man who existed only in past tense and old photographs and the features her children had inherited. She never contacted him for money. Pride wouldn't allow it. She'd said she wanted nothing from him except her freedom, and she'd meant it. Let him think she'd disappeared. Let him wonder. Let him live with the consequences of his choices while she built an empire of her own making. By the time the twins were in high school, Winter's photography had expanded to 3 locations. Rose employed 15 people. Her work had been featured in national magazines. She'd become exactly what she'd been before Archer, only stronger, wiser, unbreakable. She'd done it. She'd survived. She'd thrived. She'd raised 2 incredible humans and built a business she was proud of and created a life that mattered. But late at night, she sometimes still dreamed of him. And in those dreams, he was always reaching for her. Always too late. Always sorry. She would wake with tears on her cheeks and push the dreams away. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way. Some chapters, once ended, shouldn't be reopened. Her children were her future. Her studio was her purpose. And the past, beautiful and terrible and formative, was exactly where it belonged. Behind her, until the day the phone rang and his voice came through the speaker and 20 years of careful distance collapsed into nothing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the moment that changed everything. The moment Archer Calloway walked away from $8 billion because he heard a voice he'd been searching for across 20 years of emptiness. The corporate jet touched down at Portland International Airport 42 minutes after leaving Seattle. 42 minutes of Archer sitting motionless in leather seats that cost more than most. People's cars, staring at his phone as it exploded with increasingly frantic messages. The board was in chaos. Stock prices were already dropping. News outlets were reporting that Archer Calloway had walked out of the biggest merger in tech history with no explanation. Investors were demanding answers. His lawyers were threatening to quit. Archer silenced every notification and pulled up the only thing that mattered, the website for Winter's photography. There she was. The About page showed a woman in her mid-40s, her dark hair pulled back in a professional style, wearing a simple blazer and a smile that was confident but guarded, like she'd learned to protect her joy. Lines around her eyes spoke of years he'd missed, years of struggle he'd caused. But she was beautiful. God, she was so beautiful. The bio listed her credentials. Bachelor of Fine Arts from University of Washington. Founder and CEO of Winter's Photography, established 12 years ago. Multiple awards for portrait and commercial work. Community involvement with women's shelters and single-parent support organizations. She'd built this, all of it. While he'd been drowning in guilt and empty success, she'd been creating something real. The address was listed at the bottom. Pearl District. Archer committed it to memory, even though his hands were shaking too badly to drive. He hired a car, gave the driver the address, sat in the back seat and watched Portland unfold around him through rain-streaked windows. The city where Rose had rebuilt herself, where she'd raised their children, where she'd survived everything he'd done to her and come out stronger. The studio was in a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and huge windows. Through the glass, Archer could see people moving around inside. Lights and cameras and the organized chaos of a professional shoot in progress. And there she was. Rose stood near a lighting setup, adjusting a reflector while talking to a young woman with a clipboard. She wore jeans and a cream-colored sweater, her hair longer than he remembered, pulled back in a loose braid. No makeup that he could see. No designer clothes, no armor of wealth and status, just Rose, real and solid and more beautiful than any memory he'd tortured himself with for 20 years. Archer sat in the car for 10 full minutes, watching her work, watching her laugh at something one of her employees said, watching her frame a shot with her hands, her photographer's eye still sharp, watching her exist in a world she'd built without him. Then he made himself get out of the car, made himself walk to that door, made himself reach for the handle even though his hands were shaking and his heart was trying to break through his ribcage. The bell chimed when he entered. Several people looked up from their work. A young man stepped forward, professional smile in place. "Can I help you?" Then recognition flickered across his face. Those eyes. Archer knew those eyes. He saw them every time he looked in a mirror. "Mr. Calloway?" Rose turned. Their eyes met across the studio, across 20 years of silence, across the wreckage of everything they'd been and the impossible possibility of what they might become. Archer watched every emotion flicker across her face in rapid succession. Shock that froze her in place, recognition that clearly hurt, fear that made her take a step backward, anger that hardened her expression, and something else, something she tried to hide but he saw anyway, Because he'd spent 20 years learning to read the shadows of her in every woman who wasn't her. She still felt something. It might be hate. It might be fury, but it wasn't indifference. And right now, that was enough. "Everyone take 15, Rose said quietly, her voice steady even though Archer could see her hands trembling. "Landon, Harper, you too." Harper. The young woman from behind the camera stepped forward, and Archer's breath caught. His daughter. That was his daughter. She had Rose's delicate features and his coloring and eyes that assessed him with uncomfortable intelligence. "Mom," the young man, Landon, started. "It's fine," Rose said, still not breaking eye contact with Archer. "Please." The twins exchanged a look that spoke of years of wordless communication. Then they left through a back door, both of them shooting protective glances at their mother. When the studio was empty, when it was just Archer and Rose and 20 years of unspoken words between them, she finally crossed her arms over her chest. A defensive posture he recognized from their marriage, from fights they'd had when he was too stupid to recognize what he was destroying. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know. I hung up on you for a reason. I know that too." "Then why?" Her voice cracked slightly, the first sign that her composure was costing her. "Why are you standing in my studio, Archer?" "Because I heard your voice and I couldn't breathe. Because I've spent 20 years looking for you. Because..." He took a step closer and saw her stiffen. "Because I'm still in love with you, and hearing your voice again reminded me that every single day for the past 20 years has been empty without you." Rose laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was bitter and sharp as broken glass. "You're in love with a memory, with guilt, not with me. You're wrong. I'm not." She moved to her desk, putting furniture between them like a barrier. "You don't know who I am anymore, Archer. I'm not the woman who left Seattle. I'm not the girl you married. That person died the night I found you with Felicity." The name landed like a punch to his solar plexus. "Archer." "Ersta. Don't." Her hand came up, palm out. "Don't apologize. Don't explain. I've spent 2 decades building a life where your choices don't define me. I won't let you walk in here and undo that. I'm not trying to undo anything. I just needed to see you, to know you were okay. Well, now you know. I'm fine. Better than fine. I have a business I built from nothing. I have..." She stopped herself, but Archer caught it. "Children," he said softly. "You have children, Landon and Harper." Rose's face went carefully blank, a mask sliding into place. "That's none of your business. How old are they?" "Archer, please, just tell me how old they are." The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire about to snap. Rose's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and Archer wanted to cross the space between them, wanted to hold her, wanted to fix everything even though he knew some things were too broken to mend. 19, Rose finally whispered. "They're 19. The math hit him like a freight train. 19 years, 9 months of pregnancy. She'd been carrying his children when she walked out. Had been planning to tell him that night probably, before she found him with Felicity. "They're mine," he said, and it wasn't a question. "No." Rose's voice turned to steel, sharp enough to cut. "They're mine. I carried them alone. Gave birth to them in the back room of a diner because I couldn't afford a hospital. Raised them on 3 jobs and 5 hours of sleep and determination you can't possibly understand. You were gone, Archer. You made your choice, and I made mine. You should have told me." The words escaped before he could stop them, and Rose's face transformed. All the careful control shattered into pure fury. "Why?" The word exploded from her. "So you could play part-time father between board meetings and affairs? So you could fill their college funds with guilt money while teaching them that success matters more than integrity? I protected them from you, Archer, and I would do it again. I deserved to know I had children. You deserved nothing." Rose was shaking now, 20 years of suppressed rage finally finding its voice. "You destroyed our marriage. You humiliated me. You looked me in the eye while I was planning to tell you about our babies, and you told me I'd become boring. As if my value was determined by how well I entertained you. You don't get to walk in here 20 years later and claim paternal rights." "You're right." Archer felt something breaking inside him, something he'd been holding together with willpower and therapy and desperate hope. "You're absolutely right. I was a monster. I destroyed everything good in my life because I was too immature and insecure to appreciate what I had. I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve a second chance. But Rose. His voice broke on her name. He didn't try to hide it. Didn't try to maintain the composure that had served him so well in boardrooms and negotiations. He just let her see him. Completely. The broken man underneath the billions. I've spent 20 years becoming someone worthy of you, and I didn't even know if you were alive to see it. That's not my responsibility, she said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. I know, but it's my truth. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands, pulled up article after article. I've been in therapy for 15 years. I sold half my company and donated $300 million to organizations supporting single mothers. I wrote a public letter about my failures without naming you. I've tried, Rose. God, I've tried to become the man I should have been when I had you. Rose glanced at the phone, then away, like looking too long might weaken her resolve. Good for you. That doesn't change the past. No. But maybe it changes what's possible now. Nothing is possible now. She moved toward the door, opening it. A clear dismissal. You need to leave, Archer. And please, stay away from my children. They don't need a father who shows up 2 decades late. Can I ask you one thing? Just one, and then I'll go. She hesitated, hand on the door, exhaustion written in every line of her body. What? Are you happy? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Her expression softened almost imperceptibly, and for just a second, Archer saw past the armor to the woman underneath. I have a life I'm proud of, she said finally. That's better than happy. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. She held the door wider, her message clear. Goodbye, Archer. He walked toward the exit, each step feeling like walking toward his own execution. But as he reached the threshold, he turned back. I won't stay away from them, he said quietly. From Landon and Harper. They're adults. They have the right to decide if they want to know their father. I'll respect whatever they choose, but I won't hide anymore. I've hidden from my mistakes long enough. Rose's face went pale. You have no right. I have every right. And so do they. He held her gaze, let her see that he meant every word. I'm staying in Portland. I'm renting an apartment, and if they want to meet me, I'll be there. If they don't, I'll respect that. But I won't disappear again, Rose. Not from them, and not from you. He left before she could respond, stepping out into Portland drizzle that matched the tears finally sliding down his face. Behind him, through the glass, he saw Rose sink into a chair, her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. And he hated himself all over again for being the cause of her pain. But he meant what he'd said. He wasn't running anymore. Whatever happened next, however the story ended, he would face it. Face her. Face the children he'd never known and the life he'd destroyed. He owed them that much. He owed himself that much. Even if it killed him. The coffee shop was called Common Grounds, tucked into a corner of Portland's Northwest District, with mismatched furniture and the kind of espresso that serious coffee drinkers would kill for. Archer sat in a corner booth, arrived 30 minutes early because the alternative was pacing his rented apartment until he wore a path in the hardwood. Landon and Harper had agreed to meet him. After he'd sent them a carefully worded message through LinkedIn, professional and respectful, asking only for an hour of their time. No demands, no assumptions, just a request from a stranger who happened to be their father. Landon had wanted to ignore it. Harper had convinced him otherwise. Archer knew this because Harper had told him in her response, her words carrying a directness that reminded him painfully of Rose. We deserve answers. And Mom's been carrying this alone for too long. 1 hour. Don't be late. So here he was. 20 minutes early, coffee going cold in front of him. Hands shaking slightly as he watched the door. They walked in together at exactly 3 o'clock, and Archer's breath caught. Landon was tall, built like Archer had been at 19, with serious eyes that assessed everything. He moved with careful control, like someone who'd learned young to be the protector. Harper was smaller, delicate like Rose, but there was steel in the way she carried herself. They both wore jeans and practical jackets. Both had Rose's artistic eye in the way they observed the space before spotting him. His children. God, his children. Archer stood as they approached, resisting the urge to reach out, to hug them, to close 20 years of distance in one desperate gesture. Thank you for meeting me, he said instead, his voice rough. I wasn't sure you would. We almost didn't, Landon said flatly, sliding into the booth across from him. Harper sat beside her brother, a united front. Mom doesn't know we're here. I won't tell her unless you want me to. Harper studied him with uncomfortable intensity, the kind of gaze that suggested she'd inherited Rose's ability to see through pretense. You look like us. Like Landon especially. You have your mother's eyes, Archer said softly. Both of you. Let's skip the pleasantries, Landon cut in, his voice hard with the protectiveness Archer recognized and respected. Why should we care that you exist? You weren't there when Mom worked 3 jobs while pregnant. You weren't there when we were born in a diner because she couldn't afford a hospital. You weren't there for birthdays or first days of school or any of the 1,000 moments that matter. What makes you think you get to be here now? The words landed like physical blows, each one deserved. Archer absorbed them without flinching. Nothing makes me think I deserve to be here, he said quietly. You're absolutely right about all of it. I failed your mother. I failed you. I failed at being the kind of man who shows up. But you deserve to know your father, even if he's deeply flawed. Even if he spent 19 years missing everything that mattered. We know enough, Landon said coldly. We know you cheated on Mom. We know you made her feel worthless. We know she left with nothing and built everything alone. That's all true. And there's nothing I can say that makes it better. Archer leaned forward, his hands flat on the table. But you should also know that not a single day has passed where I haven't regretted what I did. Not one. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too stupid to recognize what I had. Regret doesn't give you a relationship with us, Landon shot back. Harper spoke for the first time since they sat down, her voice thoughtful. What do you want from us? Archer looked at her, at this daughter who'd grown up without him, and felt tears threaten. Honestly, I don't know. A chance to know you, to answer questions, to maybe, someday, be someone you don't hate. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I know I can't be your father in any meaningful way. That role is filled. Your mother is both parents to you, but maybe I can be something. A friend, a resource, someone who gives a damn about your lives. Mom will hate this, Harper said quietly. Probably. Archer's smile was sad. Your mother has every right to hate me forever, but you're adults. You get to make your own choices about who you let into your lives. The twins exchanged one of their wordless looks, 19 years of twin telepathy in a single glance. We'll think about it, Harper finally said. But we're not promising anything. That's more than I hoped for. Landon stood abruptly, and Harper followed. But as they reached the door, Landon turned back. One question. If you could go back, if you could undo what you did to Mom, would you? Without hesitation, Archer said. Every single time. But I can't. So all I can do is try to be better now than I was then. Landon nodded once, something shifting in his expression. Then he and Harper were gone, leaving Archer alone with cold coffee and the fragile hope that maybe, possibly, redemption wasn't completely impossible. That night, Rose knew something was wrong the moment her twins came home. They had matching guilty expressions, the same look they'd worn at age 6 when they tried to bake her a birthday cake and nearly burned down the kitchen. What did you do? She asked, setting down the contract she'd been reviewing. Nothing, they said in perfect unison, which always meant they'd definitely done something. Harper cracked first. She always did. We met him. Dad. Archer. Whatever we're supposed to call him. Rose's heart stopped. Literally stopped for 3 full seconds before restarting with painful force. You what? He reached out on LinkedIn, Landon explained. Defensive. Asked to meet. We thought we deserved answers. So, you went behind my back. You would have said no. Landon shot back. Of course I would have said no. Rose stood, pacing, her hands shaking. He's dangerous. Not physically, but emotionally. He has this way of making you believe he's changed. And then what, Mom? Harper's voice was gentle. He seemed genuine. Broken, even. Not like the monster we imagined. You imagined him correctly, Rose said, but her voice lacked conviction. We're not children anymore, Landon said quietly. We can make our own decisions about who we let into our lives. Not when it comes to him. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. Rose's composure cracked, 20 years of protective fury spilling out. Life is your father cheating on me while I was planning to tell him about you. Life is giving birth in a diner because I couldn't afford a hospital. Life is working until my hands bled so you could have clothes that fit. Don't lecture me about fair, Landon. The silence that fell was heavy and uncomfortable. Harper moved to her mother, wrapped her arms around her. "We're sorry, Mom. We're not trying to hurt you. We've always wondered about him. And now he's here, and we thought maybe what? That he's changed? That 20 years erases what he did. Maybe that people can grow," Harper said softly. "Isn't that what you taught us? That everyone deserves a chance at redemption? Everyone except the person who destroyed me." Rose pulled away, walking to her room, closing the door before the tears could fall, before her children could see how terrified she was. Because the truth was, she wasn't just angry that they'd met Archer. She was terrified. Terrified because when he'd walked into her studio, her heart had recognized him before her mind could build its defenses. Terrified because 20 years hadn't killed what she felt for him, had just buried it under survival and single motherhood and sheer stubborn will. Terrified because part of her wanted to forgive him, and that felt like the ultimate betrayal of the woman who'd survived his destruction. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then something, instinct or masochism or fate, made her pick up. "Hello?" Silence. Then, "Rosalie Winters, this is Felicity Brennan. I believe we have something in common." Rose's blood turned to ice. "How did you get this number?" "I have my ways." Felicity's voice was smooth as poisoned honey. "I wanted to warn you, woman to woman. Archer's been making quite the show of redemption lately. Very performative, very convincing. I'm hanging up. He did the same thing with me, you know. After you left, he played the broken man for 6 months. Swore he'd changed. Begged me to marry him. Then the second the ring was on my finger, he went right back to his old patterns. Cheating, lying, making promises he had no intention of keeping. That's not," Rose started, but Felicity cut her off. "Not what he told you. Of course not. He's very good at spinning narratives. But ask yourself this, Rosalie. Do people really change? Or do they just get better at hiding who they've always been?" The line went dead. Rose sat there in the darkness of her bedroom, phone in trembling hands. Felicity's words poisoning every soft feeling she'd been developing. What if she was right? What if this was all performance? What if Archer was just better at manipulation now than he'd been 20 years ago? She didn't sleep that night. Just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, second-guessing everything, terrified that she was about to make the same mistake twice. By morning, Rose had made a decision. If Archer wanted to prove he'd changed, if he wanted any chance of being in her life or her children's lives, he would have to earn it. Not with words, not with grand gestures, with consistent action over time. She showed up at his apartment at 8 in the morning, still in her pajamas. Her hair a mess, exhaustion written in every line of her face. He answered the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking like he'd slept as poorly as she had. "Felicity called me," she said without preamble. "Said you did this same redemption arc with her, that you begged her to marry you, then went right back to cheating." Archer's face hardened. "She's lying. Is she? Or are you? I never asked Felicity to marry me. She maneuvered me into that marriage through social pressure and manipulation. And yes, I went along with it because I was still running from my mistakes. But I never loved her, Rose. Not for a second. She was a distraction, and a terrible one. How do I know you're telling the truth? You don't. You have to decide what you believe." He stepped aside. "Come in. Let me show you something." Rose hesitated, then walked into his apartment, a modest 2-bedroom in Northwest Portland that was nothing like the penthouse she remembered. The living room was sparse. Rental furniture. No personal touches, except for one wall completely covered in photographs and newspaper clippings and printed articles. Rose moved closer, her breath catching. It was a timeline. 20 years of her life, pieced together from whatever public information Archer had found. Articles about Winters photography winning awards. A feature from Portland Monthly. Photos from her website. Images of Landon and Harper from their high school graduation. "This is creepy," she whispered. "I know," Archer said quietly. "But I needed to know you were okay. For years I had nothing. You disappeared so completely. Then about 5 years ago, one of my investigators found a mention of Winters' photography in a gallery review. After that, I followed everything I could find. Not to stalk you, but to feel connected to you somehow. To know you were thriving." Rose saw photos of herself she didn't remember being taken. Public moments captured and saved like treasures. You knew about them. About Landon and Harper. Not at first. About 3 years ago when they started appearing in your company photos. I did the math. Realized they were mine. and I hated myself all over again for missing everything. Why didn't you reach out then? Because you'd built a life without me. Who was I to disrupt that? I figured the best thing I could do was stay away. Let you have your peace. He looked at her with eyes red-rimmed from sleepless nights. Then I heard your voice on that call and 20 years of restraint just shattered. I couldn't stay away anymore. I'm sorry. Rose touched one of the photos. Her laughing at a gallery opening 3 years ago. This is insane. This whole thing is insane. Normal people don't do this. I'm not normal. I'm a man who destroyed the only thing that ever mattered and spent 2 decades trying to figure out how to live with that. He moved closer. I know this looks obsessive. Maybe it is. But Rose, you need to understand something. I'm not trying to recreate what we had. I'm not trying to turn back time. I'm trying to earn the right to know who you are now. The woman who survived me. The woman who built all this. That woman is even more extraordinary than the girl I married. Stop. Rose's voice broke. Stop saying the right things. Stop making me want to believe you. I can't. Because they're true. They stood there, inches apart, 20 years of longing and regret and impossible hope crackling in the space between them. I'm terrified, Rose whispered. Me too. If I let you in, if I take this risk, you have to understand. There's no third chance. If you hurt me again, if you make me regret this, I will make sure you never see me or the twins again. Do you understand? Yes. And you have to meet my conditions. All of them. No shortcuts, no special treatment because you're rich. Name them. Rose pulled out her phone, typed as she spoke, her voice gaining strength with each word. 1. You attend therapy with me. Real therapy with someone who specializes in betrayal trauma. 2. You build a relationship with Landon and Harper on their terms, not yours. 3. You donate $10 million to women's shelters in Portland. In my name, not yours. 4. You work at my studio for 6 months, learning the business from the ground up. No special treatment. 5. At the end of those 6 months, Landon, Harper, and I vote on whether you've earned the right to stay in our lives. If any one of us says no, you leave and never contact us again. Archer didn't hesitate. I accept. All of it. Just like that. Just like that. When do I start? Rose looked at him. At this man who'd destroyed her, who'd obsessed over her, who was standing here willing to submit to any condition for a chance at redemption. Tomorrow, 8 a.m., don't be late. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Rose? She looked back. Thank you for this chance. I won't waste it. Rose didn't respond, just walked out into Portland morning and let herself feel something she hadn't allowed in 20 years. Hope. Dangerous, fragile, terrifying hope. Now I need to pause here because this is where the story gets really interesting. This is where we find out if people can actually change, if 20 years of work means anything, if love can survive the kind of betrayal that should have killed it. Hit that like button right now if you're invested in this story. And I want to ask you something important. Team Rose or Team Archer? Drop a comment. Did Rose have the right to keep the twins from him? Or did Archer deserve to know he was a father? There's no easy answer, and that's what makes this real. If you haven't subscribed to Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips, do it now. Because we tell stories that challenge you, that make you feel everything, that remind you that life is complicated and messy and beautiful. Share this with someone who believes in second chances, or someone who needs to hear that redemption is possible. Because what happens over the next 6 months will either restore your faith in human nature or break your heart. Let's find out which. Archer showed up at Winter's Photography at 7:45 the next morning, 15 minutes early. He'd learned that much from therapy. Show up early. Follow through. Let your actions speak louder than your words. Rose was already there, of course, setting up for a shoot, her movements efficient and practiced. She barely glanced at him when he entered. You're early, she said. Couldn't risk being late. She handed him a binder, thick with policies and procedures. Read this. Memorize it. Desmond will train you on our systems. You'll be assisting on shoots, managing equipment, doing whatever needs doing. No ego. No pulling rank. You're the lowest person on the totem pole here. Understand? Yes. Desmond turned out to be a patient man in his 30s, with the kind of calm competence that suggested he'd seen everything. He walked Archer through their camera systems, their lighting setups, their client management software. Miss Winters runs a tight ship, Desmond explained. Work hard, be honest, Show respect, and she'll support you. Slack off or lie or bring drama, and you're gone. No second chances. Understood, Archer said, and meant it. The first week was humbling. Archer Calloway, who'd built a tech empire, who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals, who'd commanded boardrooms full of executives, was now hauling lighting equipment and learning the difference between a reflector and a diffuser. Harper found it hilarious. "You're doing it wrong," she said on day 3, watching him struggle with a light stand. "Reflectors don't work that way. In business, we just outsource this," Archer muttered. "This isn't business," Landon said sharply. "This is art. Mom built this with her hands and her vision. If you can't respect that, you can leave." Archer met his son's eyes. "You're right. I'm sorry. Show me how to do it correctly." Something shifted in Landon's expression. Not forgiveness, not trust, but maybe the beginning of respect. The therapy sessions started in week 2. Dr. Leontine Ashford was a woman in her 50s with iron gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She didn't let either of them hide behind excuses. "Let's start with why you cheated," she said to Archer in their first session. Rose sat across from him, arms crossed, her face carefully neutral. "I was terrified," Archer said slowly, "of how much I loved her, of the vulnerability that came with that. So I sabotaged it before it could destroy me." "What did the affair give you?" Dr. Ashford asked. "Power, control, validation that I was still exciting instead of just domesticated." Rose's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. "And what did it cost you?" "Everything that actually mattered." Archer looked at Rose. "My wife, my integrity, 20 years of peace, the chance to know my children, everything." The sessions continued weekly, excavating the ruins of their marriage. Rose spoke about the loneliness of being married but completely alone, about giving up her photography and watching herself disappear, about the morning she found out she was pregnant and the night she found him with Felicity. Archer listened, really listened, absorbed her pain without defensiveness or excuses, let himself feel the full weight of what he'd done. After one particularly brutal session, they walked to their cars in silence. Then Rose stopped. "I didn't understand how much I let myself disappear," she said quietly. "You created the environment, but I chose to fade. We were both wrong, just differently." It was the first time she'd admitted any responsibility. Archer felt something shift between them. "Thank you," he said, "for doing this. I'm learning things about myself too." By month 3, Archer had learned the rhythm of the studio. He arrived early, stayed late, did whatever needed doing without complaint. The team slowly stopped treating him like a curiosity and started treating him like a colleague. He built a relationship with the twins cautiously. Coffee meetings that turned into lunch. Lunch that turned into basketball games with Landon where they didn't talk about the past, just played. Long conversations with Harper about psychology and human behavior and why people hurt each other. "I'm not ready to call you Dad," Landon said one day after a particularly good game. "I don't expect you to," Archer replied. "I haven't earned that. Maybe I never will." "But you're trying," Landon admitted. "That counts for something." The donation to women's shelters was made anonymously in Rose's name. $10 million to the exact organizations that had saved her 20 years ago. When she found out, she cried in her office. Archer heard about it from Desmond, but didn't mention it. Just kept showing up, kept working, kept proving himself through action instead of words. By month 4, small moments of trust started appearing. Rose asking Archer to drive her home after a late shoot, laughing at one of his terrible jokes during a client meeting, their hands accidentally brushing while packing equipment, and neither pulling away immediately. The twins noticed. "Just kiss her already," Harper said one day when they were alone. "It's not that simple," Archer replied. "It is exactly that simple. You love her. She loves you. You've both done the work. Your mother isn't ready, and I won't push her. I'll wait however long it takes." By month 5, Archer realized something. He'd fallen in love with Rose all over again, not with the memory of who she'd been, but with who she was now. The strong, brilliant, creative woman who'd survived his worst and built something beautiful from the wreckage. She was extraordinary. And if she never wanted more than this cautious friendship, this careful collaboration, he would take it. He would take whatever pieces she was willing to give. The 6th month arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. The vote that would determine everything. They gathered at Rose's house, the first time Archer had been invited inside. It was modest but warm, full of photographs and life, and proof that she'd built a real home. Before we vote, Rose said, I want you to tell us something truthful. Why are you really doing this? Is it guilt, ego, or something else? Archer looked at each of them. His children. The woman he'd destroyed and was desperately trying to deserve. At first it was guilt, he said honestly. Grief for what I'd lost. But these past 6 months, it's become something else. I'm doing this because I finally understand what love actually means. It's not about possession or passion or making someone fit into your life. It's about earning the right to be in theirs. It's about showing up, doing the work, being honest even when it's uncomfortable. He looked at Rose. I'm doing this because you three are the only thing in my life that's ever been real. And I want to be worthy of that reality, even if it's just as a friend or someone on the periphery. I'm doing this because I love you all. And love means staying even when it's hard. Silence fell heavy and expectant. Harper spoke first. I vote yes. He's been genuine. I've been watching for signs of manipulation or performance, and I don't see it. I see someone trying to heal. All eyes turned to Landon. He was quiet for a long moment, his face serious. You hurt my mother, he said finally. That's something I don't forget easily. But you've also shown up, consistently. You listen when I talk. You don't try to buy affection. You've submitted to every condition without complaint. He took a breath. I vote yes. Conditionally. You stay, but the second you hurt anyone in this family, I will make your life a legal nightmare. Archer nodded seriously. Understood. And thank you. Now everyone looked at Rose. The deciding vote. The one that mattered most. I've spent 20 years protecting myself, she said slowly. Building walls so high nothing could hurt me again. These 6 months you've been chipping away at those walls. Not forcefully but gently. Showing me who you've become. She looked directly at Archer. I'm not ready to be in love with you again. I don't know if I ever will be, but I'm ready to let you stay. To see what's possible. So my vote is yes. Archer's eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. Thank you. All of you. I know I don't deserve this, but I'll spend every day earning it. Good, Rose said. Because starting tomorrow you're officially a partner in Winter's photography. Not as a consultant. As a full partner. Archer's head snapped up. What? We're expanding to Seattle. Opening a second studio. And you know that city better than anyone. She held his gaze. If you want to be part of this family, you work with us. Equal partnership. Equal say. Prove this isn't about owning me or my business. Prove it's about building something together. Yes. Archer's voice was rough with emotion. God, yes. When do we start? The twins excused themselves, leaving Rose and Archer alone in her living room for the first time in 20 years. You're really giving me a partnership? He asked softly. I'm giving you a chance to prove that this isn't about control or guilt or redemption. It's about building something real, as equals this time. I won't let you down. Rose stood, moving toward the kitchen. Stay for dinner. We're having Thai food. I think you used to like it. I still do. As Rose heated up food, Archer watched her move through her kitchen. This life she'd built without him. This home full of warmth and photographs and proof that she'd not just survived, but thrived. Rose, he said quietly. She turned, wooden spoon in hand. I'm in love with you. Still. Always. But I need you to know, I'm okay with this. With friendship, with partnership, with whatever you're comfortable giving. I'm not waiting for you to fall in love with me again. I'm just grateful to be here. Rose set down the spoon, turned to face him fully, something vulnerable in her expression. What if I told you I never stopped loving you? Archer went very still. What? I buried it. Covered it with survival and anger and sheer stubborn will. But it never died, Archer. And these 6 months, watching you with Landon and Harper, seeing you humble yourself, learning who you've become, it's all coming back. She moved closer. Stronger than before because it's not built on illusion anymore. It's built on truth. Rose, she was close enough now that he could see the tears in her eyes. I'm terrified, absolutely terrified, but I think I want to try, really try, not just partnership, but us. Are you sure? No. But I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions. Archer cupped her face with shaking hands, giving her every chance to pull away. If we do this, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "The second I do anything that makes you uncomfortable, the second you feel unsafe or unvalued, you tell me. No suffering in silence. No hoping I'll figure it out. We communicate, or this doesn't work. I promise." "Then can I kiss you? Because I've been dying to kiss you for 6 months." Rose smiled, really smiled, for the first time in his presence. Yes, he kissed her like she was the answer to every prayer he'd never known to speak. Gentle at first, questioning, making sure she was certain. Then Rose's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and gentleness ignited into 20 years of longing. They broke apart gasping. "Wow," Rose breathed. "Yeah." Applause erupted from the hallway. Both twins were standing there, grinning. Finally, Harper shouted. "About damn time," Landon added. Rose laughed, pulling away from Archer with flushed cheeks. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough," Harper said. "This is the best dinner entertainment ever." They ate Thai food together, all 4 of them, and for the first time in 20 years, Archer felt like he was home. Really home. Not in a building or a city, but with these people who'd given him a second chance he didn't deserve, but would spend every day earning. 1 year later, Archer proposed. Not in a fancy restaurant, not with an elaborate scheme, just on a random Tuesday, after they'd finished a shoot together, standing in the empty studio with Portland rain drumming against the windows. "Marry me," he said. Rose looked up from coiling cables. "What?" "Not now. Not even soon. But someday, when you're ready, marry me again. Let me stand in front of everyone and promise to love you better this time. To honor you, protect you, choose you every single day." Rose was quiet for a long moment. "Ask me again in 6 months. If we make it 6 more months without falling apart, ask me then." "Deal." 6 months later, he asked again. They were in her kitchen, cooking dinner together, moving around each other with the ease of people who'd learned each other's rhythms. "So," Archer said casually, flipping a vegetable. "It's been 6 months." "It has," Rose agreed, not looking up from chopping. "I believe I was supposed to ask you something." "You were?" He set down his spatula, turned to face her. "Marry me, Rose. Let me do it right this time. Let me show you every day for the rest of our lives that I understand the difference between what glitters and what's gold. That I choose gold every single time." Rose set down her knife. "Yes. Yes. Yes." She moved into his arms. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I believe you've changed. Yes, I think we can build something even better than what we had before. Yes, to all of it." The wedding was small, just family and close friends in the garden behind Winter's photography. Rose wore a simple dress. Archer wore a suit without flash. And when they exchanged vows, they didn't use traditional words. "I promise to show up," Archer said, his voice thick with emotion. "To choose you daily. To honor the woman who survived my worst and still found grace enough to forgive me. To be the father our children deserved from the beginning. To never, ever take you for granted again. I promise to trust," Rose said. "To be vulnerable. To build with you instead of apart from you. To remember that we're stronger together. To forgive, not forget, but to let love be louder than old pain." Landon and Harper stood as joint witnesses, and when the officiant pronounced them married, both twins shouted finally so loud everyone laughed. That night, in a hotel overlooking the city, Rose and Archer lay tangled together. "We lost 20 years, Rose whispered. "We gained wisdom, children, and a love strong enough to survive death and resurrection." Archer pulled her closer. "I'd live those 20 years of pain again if it meant ending up here. Understanding how precious you are." "Don't waste any more time then," Rose said, and pulled him close. 3 years later, Winter's photography had 4 locations. Landon had finished law school and passed the bar. Harper had her doctorate in psychology and was running support groups for children of divorced parents. Rose and Archer stood in the newly opened Seattle branch, watching their children, successful and whole and proof that sometimes the best thing you can teach your kids is how to survive, how to forgive, and how to build something beautiful from wreckage. "Some love stories don't follow neat timelines," Rose said, leaning into Archer's side. "Some break completely before they can be rebuilt into something stronger," Archer agreed. "Some people need to lose everything to understand what they had." He kissed her temple. "I was that person, and you were strong enough to survive my destruction, wise enough to recognize my transformation, and brave enough to risk your heart one more time. Their second chance hadn't erased the past. It had redeemed it. In the space where betrayal once lived, forgiveness had built something more beautiful than memory, more enduring than regret. A love that had died and come back to life. A love that had learned the difference between passion and commitment. A love that chose, every single day, to be worthy of the second chance it had been given. And that is the truest kind of love there is, the kind that survives everything. Before we end, I need to tell you something important. This story, Rose and Archer's story, it's about more than romance. It's about life lessons we all need to hear. Lesson 1. Betrayal doesn't have to define you. Rose could have let Archer's betrayal destroy her permanently. Instead, she used it as fuel to rebuild stronger. When someone breaks you, you have a choice. Stay broken or rebuild yourself into someone unbreakable. Your past pain can become your future strength. Lesson 2. Real change requires real work. Archer didn't just apologize. He spent 20 years transforming. Therapy, donations, public accountability, humble service. Words are cheap. Transformation is expensive. It costs time, ego, and consistent effort over years, not just empty promises. Lesson 3. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. Rose didn't forgive Archer to help him. She forgave to free herself from the prison of hatred. But forgiveness doesn't mean trusting immediately. It means releasing the poison while rebuilding trust slowly with clear boundaries. Lesson 4. Second chances must be earned, not given freely. Rose's 5 conditions weren't punishment. They were protection. Archer had to prove transformation before accessing her heart. A second chance without changed behavior is just a repeat of the first mistake. Lesson 5. Some love stories need to die to be reborn. Their first marriage had to end completely. The second version was built on truth, not illusion. Sometimes the best thing you can do for a relationship is let it die. If it's meant to survive, it will resurrect stronger. Lesson 6. Your children are watching everything. Landon and Harper learned about resilience from Rose, about accountability from Archer's redemption. The greatest inheritance you give your children isn't money. It's modeling how to handle failure, survive betrayal, and choose growth. Your character under pressure teaches more than your words ever will. Lesson 7. Wealth without love is poverty. Archer had billions but was empty. Rose had nothing but her children and was rich in purpose. Success without connection is just expensive loneliness. Chase meaning and relationships, not just achievement and money. Lesson 8. Redemption is possible, but not guaranteed. Archer's story could have ended differently. Rose could have said no at any point. You can change completely and still not get the outcome you want. Change anyway. Become better for yourself, not just for what you might gain. Rose and Archer's story isn't about condoning betrayal. It's about the complexity of human growth. It's about a woman who survived the unsurvivable and a man who spent 20 years earning the right to be in her presence. It's about twins who got to decide whether their father deserved a place in their lives. Most importantly, it's about the truth that people can change, but change is proven through years of consistent action, not through promises. Some of you needed to hear Rose's strength. Some needed to see Archer's accountability. Some needed to know that second chances, when truly earned, can create something more beautiful than the original. Whatever you needed from this story, I hope you found it. Now I need something from you one final time. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something deep in your chest, hit that like button right now. If you believe in redemption and second chances, in the power of genuine transformation, subscribe to Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips. Drop a comment answering this. What's the biggest life lesson you're taking from Rose and Archer's story? I read every single comment and I want to know what resonated with you. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone surviving betrayal. Someone trying to change. Someone who believes in second chances. And remember this, your story isn't over. No matter what you've survived, no matter what mistakes you've made, you can rebuild. You can transform. You can choose differently. Rose rebuilt her life from a bus station with $847 and 2 babies in her belly. If she can do that, what can you do? Archer spent 20 years becoming worthy of a second chance he wasn't guaranteed to get. That's the kind of commitment real change requires. Whatever you're facing, whoever you're becoming, know this. I see you. This community sees you. And your next chapter can be more beautiful than anything you've lived before. Until next time, this is Dr. Phillips reminding you that love is twilight. Sometimes it sets, but it can rise again more beautiful than before. I'll see you in the next story.